Over the weekend, thousands of refugees from Syria, Iran, and other Middle Eastern countries poured across the European border, fleeing civil wars and terror attacks.
Well, could the failed war against ISIS be the blame for this crisis?
The vacuum that was created once the caliphate was formed and so forth, and the enormous violence that's gone forward in Syria has contributed directly to the refugee crisis. I think when the U.S. played a major role in the region, when we were there on a significant basis, it would have been much easier to manage this kind of situation. Today, what you have is a crisis of major proportions.
Yes, it is. Well, joining us now to talk about it is a former Green Beret who served some 23 years in the armed forces and the author of Game Changers, Lieutenant Colonel Scott Mann. Thank you for being with us.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
It seems like everybody finally woke up last week to this just humanitarian crisis that's going on when that 3-year-old boy washed up on the beach and the man had to bury his children and his wife. But do you think that this could have been prevented if we'd had stronger military action in the region from our president?
Well, look, there's no doubt that we need to have leadership in the Middle East. The U.S. has a role to play there, and we're going to have a role to play there for a long time. And I think this administration has been remiss in the fact that it really hasn't led there. But frankly, I also think that we have to look at the administration before the Obama administration as well. I mean, we are in the longest war in our nation's history, 14 years, and I think both administrations, instead of blaming the other, really need to take a look at how we're losing this thing and what we need to do to win it.
And how do we win it then? Let's walk through 2 or 3 of the steps, you think, to sort of pick up the pieces on the last decade or so?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is, I think a well-intended President Bush shortly after 9/11 said, this war is going to be fought in the shadows by intelligence personnel and special operations. And I think that was true then. It's not true anymore. This war is on our doorstep, and I think we've got to really work with the American people to better understand what we're up against here and to understand the global narrative that ISIS have. They are recruiting people by the thousands. And I don't think really as a nation we fully understand the threat that we're up against, and I don't think our politicians do either.
Yeah, and when we talk about that recruitment and radicalization and how good ISIS is at this, these refugees aren't just fleeing civil war, they are fleeing the wrath of ISIS. And we are reading here, authorities are saying up to 800,000 people could apply for asylum in Germany by the end of the year. I mean, those numbers are startling. You want to let in the good, but not the bad. Yeah. How do you make sure you aren't bringing terrorists in, too?
Well, look, we may be tired of the global war on terror or whatever we're calling it these days, but it's not tired of us. And these guys are setting up safe haven in places like Syria and Iraq. And when they do that, they're going to displace thousands of refugees. That causes a problem for us abroad. But also, like you said, we're going to have to look very carefully at the folks that are coming here under the guise of refugee status that are actually, here to foment instability. So this problem is growing proportionally.
And in terms of a solution, in your book, Game Changers, you talk a little bit about the Syrian rebels who we've been trying to train, and President Obama has been saying, we're not going to need U.S. ground forces in Syria, we're going to train these rebels. And it turns out, look at the front page of the New York Times this morning, that effort has failed.
Yeah, look, in the book, what I talk about actually is the work that Green Berets and some other special ops guys did late in the war to work with the Afghan tribes to push back against the Taliban and al-Qaeda. And one of the things that I say in my book is that there are thousands of people around the world who are resisting these extremists, who are standing up against them. And late in the war, we did this with amazing success. In less than a year, we went from 75 peasant farmers defending their village to 15,000. Osama bin Laden and Mullah Omar were on record as citing this program as a major problem. Now, it's been boxed up and put in the attic with all of the other Afghan adventures, but my book is about taking those lessons and applying them in places like Syria and Iraq, and even here at home with the police and marginalized communities.
Scott Mann, good luck with the book, and thank you for your service.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
Appreciate it.